everyone, it's Laura, and I hope you're all doing well. So I had posted a YouTube short, getting feelers out there for if anyone's still around, and some of the feedback I got was a decent amount of y'all are RDs2Be and or new RDs, so I thought I would share my number one advice for y'all. As my backstory for those that don't know me, my name's Laura. I'm a registered dietitian. I did my undergrad from 2006 to 2010, and that was at Auburn University, and then I went on and did my internship and master's degree at Rush in Chicago from 2010 to 2012, and then I worked. And so in hindsight, there are some things that I've definitely learned, some things I did that propelled me forward, and so I thought I would give that advice to y'all. I will say, going into becoming a dietitian, I was very idealistic about the job, mainly about the salary, to be honest. I thought, even though I knew it wasn't a whole lot of money at the time, it seemed more manageable because the economy was different. Inflation wasn't what it is now. And however, I will say, as a result of my dad taught me financial literacy, and for that I'm really grateful, because when you're starting out in a new career and you're not making much money, even though in the future there are opportunities for your salary to increase, for the first 8-10 years there's not a whole lot of room for growth, especially if you live in a smaller town. And so one of the things that my dad had taught me early on was learning how to live well below your means, however that looks, but then also the extra money that you have, enjoy life, do things that you love and you want to do, but don't frivolously spend it, and use that money to invest in your future. So let me give you an example. For me, I'll give an example from when I'd moved back to Chicago and was working back at Rush. I was working in the solid organ transplant department. I was living by myself, and I was basically living paycheck to paycheck. And I knew that that wasn't sustainable long term. I knew that I needed to start putting away money. I was putting money aside for retirement, and the hospital I worked for was matching that. But I also knew that in the future I wanted kids. I knew kids were very expensive. I was renting. I knew at some point I wanted to buy something. And those were just goals that I had that I wouldn't be able to comfortably have those goals, and that was concerning to me. So what I did, one of the many ventures that I've had over my life, was I actually started working for a juice bar. It wasn't extravagant in the sense of I was working full-time as a dietitian. I had my master's degree, and here I am making minimum wage, working as a juice bar, making smoothies for people. And while I was good at it because I was a dietitian and I knew what I was talking about, I wasn't, I was making minimum wage. I was making the same amount as everyone else there was, and I had a degree. And that's one of the things I did in order to make more money, to begin to start saving. Another thing I did, I ended up moving back to Alabama, and for 6 months I lived with my parents. For 6 months after that, I had a roommate, and we had a really humble place that we were renting. And so as a result, I was able to use that money and invest in ways that then grew money, and then the more money you make, the more money grows, the more money you have. And I will say I would not be where I am today if I was just relying on my salary as a dietitian. Life would be different, to say the least, and it's something that I feel very strongly about because I empathize with students and new dietitians because it is difficult right now in a lot of ways. And when you're living paycheck to paycheck, or maybe not making as much money as you feel would make you comfortable, then it's difficult, especially because we work really hard to become dietitians, and I don't believe that the salary reflects that. That's my opinion. And so anyways, all that to say, biggest piece of advice when starting out as a dietitian is to start thinking of ways that you can make extra money, and thinking of ways that you can then invest that money. And if you're interested in ways that I invested my money, things that I did, I'd love to make a whole video of all that. But I don't want y'all to get your first job, be fresh out of school, and think working hard is done, because it's not. And especially if you're starting out making $60,000, $65,000, rent alone is insane no matter where you are, and it's difficult. And if there's things you can do early on while you're still young and while you have a lot of energy, more time, then now's the time to do it, and I strongly encourage you to do so. And so if you have any questions about that whatsoever, I am an open book. Also, I was thinking about doing a Q&A. If you have any questions at all, if you have any suggestions for future videos, I would love to hear from y'all, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.